Welcome, everyone, to Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. Today, our guest is Dr. Peter Carter. He is the author of, he's written countless articles and papers and so on. His book is Unprecedented Crime. And today, we are here to discuss world peace. Now tell me, is there any topic more important? I don't think so. And I love what the Hopi Indian said. Finding peace within our soul is our soul's purpose. Finding peace within our soul is our soul's purpose. Wow. So let me introduce you to Dr. Peter Carter. He's a retired Canadian physician who turned his sights to peace, then environmental issues, and now the climate emergency. So what a giant of a man in terms of his knowledge and his huge heart. Those of you who know the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, he's an expert reviewer for them. And he's the founder of the Climate Emergency Institute. And during his involvement in the Cold War peace movement, Peter was a member of International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, which won a Nobel Peace Prize for their important work. So, Dr. Carter, welcome. So happy to have you here today. So tell us about deep peace. What does deep peace really mean to you?
Well, I came across that idea years ago when I was involved. Many people were involved in the very big nuclear disarmament movement in the so-called Cold War days between the Soviet Union and the United States. And it was a little Irish poem, or a little Irish saying, which had a number of verses, but they were all saying, "I wish deep peace for you." And I realized, yes, we talked a lot about peace and anti-war, of course, which is essential. Disarmament, which is also essential. Conversion of military forces, to peaceful or social uses. But we really, and today's events, I'm afraid, seems to make that clear. We really need to go very, very deep into peace. And certainly the Hopi poem, and there are many wonderful sayings and poems about bringing peace into our own hearts or into our own souls. And various meditations, of course, help that. And we've had that sense and the idea of meditation and the idea of a deep peace. That's peace amongst all nations, amongst all people, amongst all populations, but even more so amongst the earth, our planet, Mother Earth, and peace with all of our other animals, peace with our animal kin, and who are actually our animal ancestors. And so a deep peace which involves everything, and involves our heart and involves our mind, of course.
Yes, for sure. So what do you see as the root causes of war? Such a deep question. What are the root causes of war?
Well, somebody said a couple of thousand years ago, money is the root of all evil. And we're seeing that manifested in a most terrible way today. So and I'm amazed by that quote, because there wasn't a whole lot of money around in those days. Maybe some Roman coins. So the root cause of war is really greed, but more than greed, it's power. Bertrand Russell, a very well-known scientist and thinker in the United Kingdom, he actually wrote a book, and he thought it was his most important book. It was a little book called Power. And he made the point that when we become either feeling powerless, or on the other hand, when people put themselves in a position of great power over other people, it leads to war. But the other thing that leads to war is historic. We use the term civilization as something which we want to achieve and something good. It's actually not all that good. All of the civilizations that have occurred over hundreds and thousands of years, they've all developed very big armies, military forces, and this seems to be very common everywhere. They make more and more money, and then we have a situation of rivalry, between countries and peoples. And that seems to inevitably in human nature, a terrible thing, lead to war. Um, People generally actually see war as a normal part of life, but it's not. People generally see war as a way of solving problems, but it never solves any problem. It just leaves us with many, many more worse problems. So I think the root cause of war is to recognize that it goes back so far, so far, so far.
And money and power, right? Money, greed,
Yeah,
power. Yeah.
yeah.
So that kind of leads me naturally to this next question on what is the significance of the war on Ukraine to the rest of the world? What do you think that's really all about? There's something deep under there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's something deep and deeply evil about that. Um, because the armaments, right, which all countries have been developing, and they continue to develop, are absolutely horrendous. They're all weapons of mass destruction. Um, uh, and we have to get rid of those weapons. We had quite a big success, in fact, in getting rid of a lot of the nuclear weapons and nuclear missiles. But that hasn't made any difference to other weapons. So we have a lot of wasted minds and wasted energy committed to making all these more and more weapons. People say they're better weapons, but every time they're worse weapons. And one of the problems, of course, about war is it perpetuates itself. So in Ukraine, um, I was devastated, really, really devastated, when that terrible situation broke out. And it's gone from bad to worse. We've seen escalation after escalation after escalation with the use of various forms of weapons. It was amazingly horrible to see all of the NATO countries in Europe um, uh, pour more and more weapons at the war. So we've got NATO countries pouring weapons into Ukraine at war, and then of course we've got Russia pouring weapons into continuing their illegal invasion of Ukraine. But at this kind of point in war, where millions and millions of people's lives are being ruined, hundreds of thousands of lives are being lost, um, I want to remind myself that war doesn't just leave many, many people physically harmed. It's the mental harm of war, which in a way is the very, very worst thing. So those people that have been forced out of Ukraine by their millions, they'll probably never get over that completely. The people in Ukraine who are surviving and tolerating amazingly, rocket attacks on their buildings, on their apartments on a daily basis. It's amazing that they can tolerate that, but mentally they're sure to carry the scars for the rest of their lives.
And it's the same in Russia, when you look at all the Russian soldiers and their families that, who that have perished.
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
loss on both sides is just not acceptable in my opinion. One of my friends is she lives in your city actually, Peter. She speaks Ukrainian, and she helps the Ukrainian refugees as they're coming into Canada. And we had a brief conversation about what you just said, the mental issues, the trauma on both sides of the fence, Ukraine and Russia. The trauma will be with those people for the rest of their lives. It's talk about PTSD. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
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 This is
Yeah.
massive. So yeah, I can see that it's an uncalled for war and how it is affecting the both countries, all countries, because on the Russia side we've got Afghanistan and Iran. You know, they're in with Russia and so on, and it's affecting the mental health of every single human being on this planet.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah.
And war does this. War is contagious, and war has these very damaging effects on our psychology, on our mental health. And now, because we're all connected with the internet, we're
Yeah.
all actually being subjected to influences of war, which of course are very
Yeah.
harmful.
Yeah.
And we're also being subjected to the propaganda of war. So if you go onto
Ah.
YouTube, right, it's all over YouTube, all over
Mm.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Some of it's accurately sort of reported, a lot of it's made up. Um, and of course, then the other cause of war, the big cause in modern warfare, is the armaments industry.
Yeah.
So, of
They're
course, the
making a fortune.
armaments
Yeah.
industry, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, we're spending over 2.24 trillion dollars a year, all of the countries together on war. It's gone up every year for the past 10 years.
Mhm.
And to me, war is probably the worst form of insanity. It's the most damaging form of insanity in all respects. Um, uh, when I was involved decades ago in the nuclear disarmament movement, and that was a very good time because of wonderful people that you're meeting, and really they were pretty successful. Um, uh, at that particular time, we were became very aware of the effects of at that time, television and advertising on the promotion of war. War is
Mm.
being constantly promoted in our
Mm.
civilization, in our culture, in
Wow.
our society. It's
Wow.
always, always out there. And that affects us all. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not a nice thing to consider, but really we do have to think about it because we
Mhm.
have to rid the world of war.
War.
There must
So
be an end to war, no matter
yeah.
how impossible, yeah, no
Yeah.
matter how impossible it may seem, right,
Yeah.
at any particular time. And there are two things, Betska, that really shocked me about this war. The first was that the peace movement didn't come to life as it always has done in
Mhm.
previous wars. You may recall that the illegal United States invasion of Iraq, there was before the invasion, when it was clear, that the American government was working up to that. There was what I called a globalization of the peace movement. We had tens of thousands of people in all cities around the world marching against this war and
Yeah,
for
that's
peace.
right.
But this didn't happen with the war in Ukraine. And I found that very, very upsetting. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful to you and your friends for giving me, but giving other people the opportunity to take a look at this. Um, the um, uh, the other aspect that I found particularly shocking was the other side of that coin. Um, the response of this illegal invasion of war, to my perception, at least generally, is a response of support. People seem to have immediately gone into the rah, 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 one side against the other side, and flags flying and one thing and another. But that doesn't help those people in Ukraine that are suffering and losing their lives, losing their building lives, and losing their livelihoods. Ukraine, it's very clear, Ukraine is being progressively demolished, and its population, its peoples, are being, in a sense, demolished as well.
Dr.
The
Carter,
Ukraine situation is.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if we could hold on to that next thought for a moment, we'll take a short pause and we'll be right back.
Can anybody out there hear me? Hear me?